It's extra time.
He shoots, and it's a goal!
Hello and welcome back to Extra Time, coming at you via podcast and of course on YouTube now. Today I am joined by Joe Tomlinson. Thank you for being here, Joe.
No worries, mate. I'm absolutely delighted to be seeing your beautiful face today.
Thank you. That's very nice of you to say. Though I noticed you're wearing a hat as usual, that's been your coronavirus go-to.
Well, do you want to see what's underneath?
Yes, I do. I absolutely do. Woof. Wowzer. I've got to say the fade's not bad.
Are you serious?
Well, look, I'm looking at you in a very small image because I've had to pin myself on screen to film. But it's not that bad because I've got one lined up on Thursday. My wife's going to cut my hair.
Is Emma going to do it?
Yeah.
Oh, mate. Don't do it, mate.
Did you have real clippers?
No, beard trimmers, which is a waste of time because I've got a beard.
Yeah, why do you own a beard trimmer?
I don't know, somebody bought them for me once. Sick joke.
Okay, well, I'm going to be using a beard trimmer for mine as well, so we'll see how it goes.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, today I thought that we'd do a little bit of like your life in football. So I kind of want to go, because I think our fans are excited to know more about our kind of history with the game. They always seem to want to know about that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I saw some of the questions you sent over earlier. I've been racking my brains trying to remember them because I've got a memory like a goldfish. Can't remember 4 days ago, let alone 10 years back.
Okay, well, let's start off with a slow ball then. Let's start off with the first live game you went to. What was it? What were your memories of it?
I mean, the very first live game I went to was probably Exeter City when we were down in the Conference South, which is not pretty football. Obviously, everybody goes on at me, don't they, all the time? Oh, why do you support Man United? Why do you support Man United? Well, the reason I support Man United is because Exeter is not a football town. I'll be honest with you. There's no real football there. Everybody plays rugby. It's rugby heartland down in the southwest. Exeter Chiefs absolutely flying. Although when I was growing up, they weren't particularly good at that either. So Exeter Chiefs were a conference team. If you've got a team in your area that's a conference team, you always support a Premier League side as well to actually be able to watch them on the television. And everybody says, well, why don't you just support the closest Premier League side? Well, it makes no difference where the closest Premier League side is to me because they're all hundreds of miles away. It takes me hours to get to anywhere that has a Premier League team from Exeter. So I just picked, I'll be honest with you, the best team, Manchester United.
The side that was winning everything.
Exactly. Pure glory hunting. So I think the first live Man United game I went to was Man United versus Aston Villa in 2003. United were blowing everyone out the water back then in 03-04. We were a pretty good side, although we weren't at our pomp. We just come off the back, I think, of winning 4 titles in 5 years.
And that was also the season that Arsenal went invincible. So, I mean, like, if you were going to pick the best side, you could have picked better.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think United ended up finishing 3rd that season, but that was the season of where Ruud van Nistelrooy, I think, the season before had scored 40 or 50 goals in all comps for United. I think 40 odd goals. And then that season, 03-04, he scored another 30 plus. So, Ruud van Nistelrooy was on fire. It was against Aston Villa. United were always going to blow Aston Villa out of the water. It finished 4-0. Van Nistelrooy scored 2. And Diego Forlan scored 2, one of which was an absolute screamer as well with his left peg. And I didn't always like Diego Forlan, but I loved Ruud van Nistelrooy. So I think he's still the greatest finisher I've ever had the pleasure to witness in the Premier League. Probably my favourite goal scorer of all time. And to see him score 2 live when I was, I think 2003, I would have been 8 or 9. That was a special game for me, Man United 4, Aston Villa 0.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty damn good one, I've got to say.
Right, what was your one?
Oh, the first game I went to was, it was a Gillingham game. So I'd have been like 6 or 7. And I didn't support Gillingham. I didn't care. But I wanted to go and watch football. My family weren't into it.
Yeah.
I can't remember who they were playing, but they lost 4-0 at home. And I was the only person not sad about this. I didn't see an Arsenal game until much later on. 2
4-0ers.
Whereas the first Arsenal game I went to actually was at the Emirates because it was much, much later on. Like I say, family not into football. So was never really going to go. So I went to the Emirates to see Arsenal draw 1-1 with Mick McCarthy's Wolves. And the goals came from Gervinho and I think Stephen Fletcher. It was absolutely rank. It was horrible.
Fletcher. Nice to hear the name. Stephen Fletcher. That's a very good shout.
He was a better finisher than anyone who started for Arsenal that day. I think Van Persie might have not started. I think he might have been injured. But I got the tickets because a friend of mine, her dad had Diamond Club membership, and so she was like, he's not going to be able to go to the game. Do you want to go? And that's like genuinely incredible seats. And I was like, yeah, sure. And then during the first half, I like felt a hand on the back of my chair, and I like turned around, just being like, who's this like leaning on my chair? And it was Bakary Sagna, who actually had a broken ankle at the time, his second broken ankle that season. So that kind of made up for it a little bit, but it was a rancid game.
Well, mine was more like raining. It's very hard to get from Exeter to Manchester, and I went up with my dad on the coach, which I probably took 6, maybe even 7 hours. I was wearing a Man United shirt, a Man United woolly hat, a Man United scarf, full tourist mode. I was in full tourist mode. I put a photo on my Instagram actually of that game, like this week, and I just look like such a tourist, such a glory hunter. But glorious days. Those are the days of Alan Smith. I remember when Alan Smith had just signed for United back in those days. I used to love Alan Smith. He'd come from Leeds, didn't he? We just hated Leeds, so that was a glorious signing. I really remember that one as well.
So you must have been, what, 8 at the time?
I think 8, 9, something like that when I first went to Old Trafford, yeah.
I don't know. You could be forgiven the scarf and hat and everything if you're 8 years old.
Yeah, you get away with the cuteness there, don't you? The cute factor pulls you in with the 8-year-old. When it's a grown man wearing a shirt, a scarf, and a woolly hat, you think, check his hard drive.
Yeah, that's a bit much. Well, I've actually got another 8-year-old question for you up next. Who was the first player you pretended to be growing up?
In the garden.
Yeah. Or at school. Do
you know what? Probably initially Paul Scholes, just because I'm ginger and like the affinity was immediately there for me with Scholesy. But I'd say most commonly David Beckham.
Okay.
Just like growing up as a Man United fan, David Beckham was like the guy. And I think partially helped because he had such a unique hairstyle. So I always used to try and copy him. So I'd have the mohawks. I'd have it very close trim. Whereas when it was Scholesy, he always had the same haircut, Scholesy. It was like, just ginger. You're just ginger. And I think secretly somewhere inside of me, there was a part of me who was going, oh, you can get away with not being ginger. But eventually I just realised, no, I am ginger.
Yeah, you've got to commit to it.
Yeah, exactly. But probably, Paul Scholes, I would say, like, obviously my favourite player of all time. I used to play in midfield. He just is everything I wanted to be and never could be as a footballer. Amazing on the ball. Early years, he used to score goals. Then he just dropped back and dominated, didn't he? And when I was sort of really growing up, like, you know, at sort of 9, 10, maybe 8, 9, 10 years old, that was when Scholesy was scoring lots of goals as well. I think it might have been 01, 02 or 02, 03. I think he scored 20 in all comps, and they were all worldies.
Yeah.
And you know when a player's just scoring screamer after screamer after screamer after screamer, you just want to go into your back garden and replicate them. So yeah, probably Scholesy and Becks, I think, were my go-tos anyway.
Those are pretty not embarrassing because I remember when Denilson signed for Real Betis, and it was like at the time, like I didn't know who he was. Obviously, I'd never seen him play, but I and like my friends who liked football would read like 442 or whatever the magazine was back then, and so we were like, this kid is Brazilian, so he must be great. He's gonna be sick, and so I remember factor. And I remember on playgrounds, like then after that, people would be like, I'm Denilson. And it was just like, well, that didn't work out that well. Whereas I at least always had the like Dutch thing, so I was like Bergkamp. Bergkamp and Edgar Davids were the guys who I always wanted. Also, because I thought Edgar Davids was like literally the coolest man in the world.
Please say you had the glasses.
I did not have the glasses.
Oh, that would have been epic.
2020, mate.
What you running around with a pair of swimming goggles on playing football would have been fantastic to watch.
Yeah, I mean, now, I feel like I'd be more likely to do that now than back then, to be honest.
Yeah, but I mean, Sam Obaseki actually has bought himself a pair of those goggles, hasn't he? Because he is short-sighted, so he's bought himself a pair of
prescription goggles,
prescription football goggles, and it immediately makes him look like an absolute baller.
Oh my god! Yeah, pity he isn't though.
I mean, he's pretty good.
He's got woeful injury record though.
Yeah, true.
Moving on then, the best player you ever saw play live. I feel like I've got an idea here.
Yeah, I mean, we'd probably say the same, won't we? We'd probably say when we went to see Leo Messi at the Nou Camp, battering Pep Guardiola's Manchester City and scoring a hat-trick.
It's not bad.
So yeah, probably Messi. Messi's like indescribably good. I can't really describe how Messi plays football. You know, where you can say like I remember watching Cristiano Ronaldo when I was first going to Old Trafford and thinking you would describe him as sort of just like pace, power, and Messi is like, it's almost you want to describe him as lazy.
Yeah,
it's really weird to describe him as that, but he doesn't really move. He kind of sits wide and then he'll just suddenly pop up centrally. He walks for about 70% of the game. You never see him sprinting unless he's on the ball. So I would say Messi is like the most unique player I've ever seen live. And obviously scoring a hat-trick Leo Messi is a privilege to watch. But I was thinking about a different answer because I thought you would say Messi as well. So
sure.
I actually think Kylian Mbappe is up there. I went to watch
I forgot you went to that game.
I went to watch PSG Lyon in 2018 when he scored 4 goals in 10 minutes. And he is the closest player I've seen to Cristiano Ronaldo when I was watching them live, when I was watching a young Ronaldo back in sort of 03, 04, 05, 06, to watching Mbappe. It's like all you want to see is him with open field, like pure pace and dribbling ability. All I remember thinking about when I was watching Mbappe is that every time he got on the ball, Lyon defenders didn't want to tackle him. And do you remember back in the days when Cristiano Ronaldo was just getting kicked up in the air by everybody?
Yeah.
It was the same thing. Like they didn't want to try and stand and tackle him. They were just fouling him. And then he obviously scored 4 goals in 10 minutes. So he was a bit of a freak. But yeah, I'd say Messi overall. But I think Mbappe and Ronaldo are also those sort of players that you just go, what is going on here? What is happening?
Yeah, like that raw physical ability. It's pretty amazing that you've seen Ronaldo, Messi, and Mbappe all play, and Neymar and Suarez.
Yeah, I mean you call it right. It is literally physical ability, like that natural physical ability. I think in terms of technical ability, I actually think it might be Thiago.
Oh yeah,
Alcantara. Yeah, I watched him this season against Chelsea at the Bridge, and I don't know whether it's sort of that short-term memory where you're like, I can remember how good he is as a footballer and I've got a really good recall for that, whereas I can't necessarily remember, watching Roy Keane and Paul Scholes in a midfield pivot that well back in 2003, whereas because it's this season I can remember watching Thiago. And Thiago, when he played against Chelsea, was so much better than any Chelsea player and any Bayern Munich player that it was like almost scary. And you look at that Chelsea team, and I'd say the Chelsea midfield is one of their stronger areas. I know they had some injury issues in that game, and they've had some injury issues this season. But Thiago, just his ability on the ball, his ability to turn, constantly playing crossfield passes. He was playing in between the split centre-backs at times. Then he was driving through midfield. When people were coming to pressure him, and sort of had obviously seen a pressure trigger from a centre-back missing a touch or something, and we're going to press Thiago on the second one, he always escaped it. So I think technically, Thiago is the best player I've seen recently play live. But yeah, I'd still go back to Messi. How would you describe Messi, having seen him live? It's really difficult, isn't it?
I don't know. I completely agree. Like I was just stood on the touchline for most of the game. And then I'd stop watching him because I'd start watching the ball. And then as soon as you started watching the ball, suddenly Messi would just appear on the ball. Yeah. Like it's just really hard to... I don't know. Like weirdly, it wasn't like your kind of vintage Messi performance.
And he still scored a hat-trick.
Yeah, and he scored a hat-trick. Like it's hilarious. But I mean, I didn't even think City were that bad in the game, like to be honest with you. But
no, they weren't. But was it Claudio Bravo who got sent off? Was he in goal?
Yeah.
It was an absolute howitzer from him, wasn't it? The game kind of turned from there. But I do remember us sitting 3 seats in front of Eric Abidal, having trained at La Masia with him earlier in the day, and just thinking, oh, this is what's happened.
That was great. Better seats than Eric.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's move from that then. Like from the best players you see. I think I personally would like to know who the worst player is that you've seen play for Man United. Because
I don't know, list, mate.
But this is the thing. Like, I mean, people talk about the squad being bad now, but even under Ferguson, there were always some rogue players in there.
I mean, I was looking at this question earlier when he sent it over, and I was thinking to myself, any of the players that would come up now in this current squad or Ferguson or compared to Ferguson's squad. And obviously, people know that I've had some tension with some Ashley Young displays over the last couple of years.
I haven't heard you say his name in about 2 years.
I know, but he has gone to Inter now, so it is fine. But having said that, he, across the course of his Manchester United career, was a fairly decent servant. I said it on Twitter when he left that, look, he hasn't been up to par for the last 2 or 3 years at Manchester United, but if you level him out across the course of his career, he has not been one of Manchester United's worst players that I've witnessed.
No, nowhere near.
I was thinking, one name immediately popped to mind, David Bellion. We signed him from Bordeaux. Just an absolute disgrace. Just nowhere near good enough to play for the club and shouldn't have been signed by Manchester United. Really weird signing. Another one, I was actually thinking for a long period about goalkeepers because post sort of Schmeichel to Van der Sar, we really had a major problem with signing goalkeepers. We'd had Barthez and it hadn't really worked out. Roy Carroll, I also wanted to put in the mix. Like
Taibbi.
Yeah, Taibbi. Like Barthez was a calamity, like constant mistakes. But Roy Carroll had nothing going for him. Tim Howard, I mean, was okay. I'm being kind. It's sort of okay. Yeah. So there was a lot of goalkeeping issues, but I kind of finally fell on Gabriel Obertan.
Oh my God.
Now,
I forgot he existed.
Yeah, so did I. I'll be honest with you. But then I was just thinking to myself, what happened post Ronaldo? And obviously we sold Ronaldo, £80 million, and there was a lot of Manchester United fans, I think, that thought we've got to reinvest this money well. We're selling the best player in the world right now, a man who's going to contribute 40 goals a season. Whoever we sign to replace him has to be good. You know, Tottenham later down the line would have the same issue with Gareth Bale, selling him and trying to replace him with, 8 players in the end they ended up buying, and I think only really Christian Eriksen and maybe one other worked out quite well. But United, Ferguson went with a very different tact. To replace Ronaldo, he signed Obertan, Owen and Valencia. So the summer Ronaldo left, if you go back and look at our transfers, I think those were the 3, and maybe Mame Biram Diouf as well, actually, which didn't exactly set the headlines alight. And Gabriel Obertan was kind of, I think, Ferguson's hope of, he might actually be something special, obviously a fairly pacey winger. He also bought Valencia, I think, for the same reason, although Valencia ended up becoming a right back, a pretty effective right mid at times. Good right back. And maybe for 2 or 3 seasons, we got the best Valencia would have ever been when he was pinging those low crosses. But to replace Ronaldo with those 3 players, an ageing Owen, an injured Owen, Valencia, who was coming from Wigan and was a bit of a shot in the dark, and Obertan, who was coming out of France with no proven ability, was nothing short of a disgrace, really. Where did that £80 million go? Where did it go? Nobody knows to this day. Man United never reinvested it. And I have to say that Gabriel Obertan was the worst of the 3. I don't like Michael Owen as a player, obviously because of those Liverpool ties in the past, and I just think he just treated Man United badly, and United fans have no affinity to him. Valencia was the best of the 3, obviously a decent servant, and became a good right back and eventually shipped him off. But Gabriel Obertan was so bad at football. So bad at football. Even Newcastle fans will tell you Gabriel Obertan was so bad at football. It comes to something that you know he's bad at football when his best known quality is the shape of his head. Because I don't think many players could name a single goal he scored.
He scored or assisted against Arsenal. I was in the pub once, like watching an Arsenal game, and there was a Newcastle fan in there. It was Arsenal Newcastle, and Obertan gets the ball in the wing, and I said, "Don't worry, it's only Gabriel Obertan," and he either scored or assisted. Then I can't remember. And this Newcastle fan went absolutely ballistic. But it was the game we ended up winning 7-3. So by the end of this match, I was like, there's a decent chance I get the shit kicked out of me because I was being such a dick to this guy. But yeah, I don't feel like Gabriel Obertan ended up doing much of anything.
Yeah, I mean, like there's obvious one like Bebe, but I don't really hold it. Like Bebe was just crap, wasn't he, when we signed him? I think Ferguson admitted he was the only player he'd ever not watched any footage of before signing. So he never really played for the club. I think Gabriel Obertan was just disastrous. But yeah, Roy Carroll, David Bellion, some of those sort of more insignificant names, Kleberson. But yeah, some of those sort of names. Any Arsenal players springing to mind for you?
Oh God, so many. Like, I mean, Gervinho was up there given like the reputation he arrived with, but Andre Santos, he was a liability. I mean, Mustafi, given the money we spent, Jesus.
Yaya Sanogo.
I mean, Sonogo came in like for nothing, for like compensation, and he helped us win the FA Cup, which like was the one that broke our trophy duck, and he scored against Borussia Dortmund, and he was actually pretty good against Bayern. Those are both in the Champions League. Like, I've never really got anything against Sonogo, like, whereas there were other guys where I was just like, you're here for a paycheck, or you're just like, I don't know, you've arrived like thinking that like you're good enough for this and you're not. Whereas Sonogo was just a kid we took a gamble on. But I was thinking the 2009-10 season then, with the departure of Ronaldo, and then Chelsea won the double, and obviously that was the 1 year, wasn't it? Was it in like a 3-year period? You made every Champions League final except that 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because obviously we then 2010-11 played Barcelona at Wembley, and obviously got Xavi and Iniesta off the park, and that was one of the greatest Champions League performances of all time. Wayne Rooney actually scored a pretty good goal, but
Wayne Rooney's goal was amazing.
Yeah, but they were a step ahead, and I just think like if you can not replace Ronaldo and then a season later after that get to a Champions League final, really shows the quality of Ferguson. I mean, he was signing players like Chicharito, wasn't he, who came I think from Guadalajara in Mexico in the 2010 season. Very unknown quantity, but a goal scorer, and that was how Ferguson did it. He was never going to find one player to replace all 40 Ronaldo goals. He just decided to distribute it around the team.
So I mean, obviously the 09-10 season was disappointing, but what was actually like the worst season you've had as a United fan? Because it's taken a real nosedive for both of us, really. Like, we both grew up with our sides like relentlessly winning or at least competing, and now it's.
Do you know what? I was thinking about this, the worst season, and I was thinking there was a period sort of 03, I think maybe 03, 04 up to like 06, you know, when you and Chelsea were very dominant and United were dropping off and Ferguson was potentially leaving the club, didn't end up leaving the club. I don't think it was as bad back then as it has been now, obviously. So I'm thinking Moyes, potentially first season of Moyes was very, very bad. I remember Olympiacos away being a real low point when we lost that game over there, and Joel Campbell scored, I think, a double actually against us. But you have to say with Moyes, got absolutely no backing, did he? He got Fellaini in the transfer window when we were talking about the likes of Kroos and Fabregas and Thiago coming through the door. We ended up with just one signing, and it was Marouane Fellaini. So he didn't really have the backing. He was obviously hindered by the fact anybody following Ferguson was going to be pretty much a disaster. Squad wasn't great either that was left with him. So I think Moyes, not the worst. I was thinking Louis van Gaal last season under Louis van Gaal, but then you've got to argue the emergence of Marcus Rashford, winning the FA Cup, can't really go down as the worst. I actually think the 18-19 Man United might be the worst season I've ever watched of the club.
Wow.
Jose's last 6 months in particular, just absolutely joyless. Hated every Manchester United game that I watched. There was nothing fun about the club. We were playing a boring brand of football. The fans had turned sour with the players had turned sour with the management. Jose was calling out our best players, you know, like Pogba was getting called out, Martial was getting called out, Rashford was getting called out. And then he left the club under sort of a cloud, being sacked, paying him a massive wage when we'd given him a new contract a year earlier, which was a big, big error. Then Solskjaer came in, and there was sort of a 4-month period of buoyancy and joy under him where, you know, our club legend, we're not playing particularly good football, but we're getting results. And then last 2 months were dismal again. So I actually think 18-19 might be my worst, because towards the end of it, I just genuinely hated the way Man United were playing. Under Louis van Gaal, it was boring, okay, it was dull, and he was not a great manager. But at the end of Jose, there was no joy. It had sucked all the joy out of the club. And I just hated watching the team. So I think probably the last 6 months of Jose was the worst I've witnessed. and that's saying something because, he won a Europa League, won a League Cup, and I still despised the football.
I mean, it was horrendous. It was horrendous.
So bad. It was so bad.
And when you've got bad football and the results aren't great, you've literally got nothing.
And like other managers, you might see the emergence of young players, and in times where you're shit, there's like young academy lads coming through. You're like, oh, that's exciting. Like Man United crap under Van Gaal, but Rashford's coming through, scores against Arsenal on his league debut, I think it was, scored in the Europa League against Midtjylland on his Europa League debut, and we were like, oh, that's quite fun. Whereas under Jose, it was like Matic, poor, Smalling and Jones, poor. We're going to play Valencia and Young, dull. De Gea's having a bit of a dip, dull. It's just like everything was crap. No youngsters other than Scott McSauce getting any game time. And he was sort of a pawn in a Jose Mourinho game where he awarded him his own personal player of the year award. It was just crap. Everything about the club was rubbish, and I just couldn't stand watching it.
So on the topic of Rashford, actually, because you mentioned him in there, like, is he your favourite player in the game currently? Yeah,
Marcus Rashford, I think, is my favourite player to watch at the moment. Just offers something different to any other Manchester United player. And obviously, I watch Man United more than I do any other club. I'm sure people would say the same about their own players. But yeah, Marcus Rashford, his development has been monumental this season in particular, both physically and in terms of ability. I think he looks like he's put on about 10 kg, 5 to 10 kg in pure muscle.
Massive.
He's
massive.
He's gone through that Ronaldo transition, hasn't he? The Cristiano beef-up mode.
Yeah.
And it's worked unbelievably well. Pre his back injury, I think he would have gone on to score maybe 15 to 20 league goals. I think was he on 14?
I think he's on 14, yeah.
14 pre-injury. I reckon he would have probably got in and around the 20 mark, maybe 18 to 20. I think he would have scored 30 plus in all competitions, got 10 assists, and he's, 22, I think, now. So his development has been absolutely monumental over the last 18 months, and I think he will get better and better. And he's finally figured out playing left is the better role for him.
Sure.
I think going into this season, there was still a question mark. Is he better as a 9? Is he better off the left? How do him and Martial work together? And to give Ole Gunnar Solskjaer credit, he doesn't get a lot of credit, Ole, does he, tactically? But his ability to work Martial and Rashford together has been really strong, because those two are much better when they play together. Rashford would have gone on to score 30 this season. Martial would have got 20 in all competitions. I think Greenwood would have got another 5 maybe in all competitions, pushing him up to, what is he? I think he's on 11 or 12 in all competitions.
Something like that. Pretty decent.
So I think he probably would have got 15, and that would have been great. Sad to see the back injury. That wasn't the best bit of management, bringing him on against Wolves late in the Cup. But, Rashford is an exciting player. He's going to get better. He would have definitely started for England at the Euros had he not got that injury and it been postponed. And I think it being in 2021 is going to be really positive for Marcus Rashford.
You think he'd have started?
Definitely.
Over who?
I think he would have gone for Sancho coming as an impact sub.
Wow, really?
I don't get me wrong, I think Jadon Sancho is the better footballer, but I think Gareth Southgate prefers Marcus Rashford coming off the left. I just think that's how Southgate would have operated. I don't think I would have agreed with it. I probably would have started Sancho myself, but I think Gareth would have gone with Rashford, Kane, Sterling, just the tried and tested who've been at international tournaments before. And I think Jadon would have probably come on as an impact sub.
Just before we get into the last couple of questions, what do you reckon Rashford is worth now in the market? Like, not that United are going to sell him, and they could obviously ask for anything they wanted, but we're hearing rumours that Lille want like 90 mil for Osimhen, and Osimhen's got fewer goals than Rashford, despite playing much more of the season. So I don't really know what he'd be worth at this point.
To Man United, he's almost priceless.
Because he's homegrown.
Because he's homegrown as well, and he's an academy boy, and the fans have a massive affinity with him. And I think if you ask 10 Man United fans, probably 7 would say their favourite player is Marcus Rashford. So I think he's almost priceless to Man United. If you were to look at it objectively, if we're looking at Jadon Sancho at, £150 million player? Mm-hmm. We're looking at 120, I think, for Marcus Rashford. Purely because he's coming out of the Premier League, which is always going to put more money on the table. He's not the player Jadon Sancho is, but Jadon Sancho is coming from a club that is more likely to sell at 150 than Man United are. Man United have the ability to hold a
that's
player
true.
purely because of finances a lot longer. The Premier League and the wage structure, the way Marcus Rashford's contract's set up, I think they could keep him a lot longer. So I think Rashford would probably cost around 120 to get out, and that's being optimistic. Just because Man United have no need to sell. He's on a long-term contract. He's coming out of the richest league in the world, and probably the only club or clubs that could afford him are Real Madrid, PSG, maybe Barcelona. So the premium would be there, I think, for Manchester United to say 120 at the base level. Especially if, like you said, Osimhen's going at the 90 mark when he's had, one season in a top 5 league, really, and he's done okay, but he's certainly not as mobile as Marcus Rashford. He's not he's obviously like a big bloke, isn't he? But he's not got that agile ability that Marcus Rashford has, where he can flip-flap through somebody's legs and then go around the other side of him and bang it top corner, which is what the fans want to see effectively. And I think that does add a bit of a premium.
Yeah, I kind of wish that when Rashford was still a little bit underappreciated at United, like last year, he'd... do you remember there was that rumour that Barcelona were interested?
Yeah.
And I quite liked that. For him playing off the left for Barca, I'd have loved that. But
would have been crazy.
Last couple ones then. I want to know a player or multiple players who everyone else hates but you love. Okay.
So I wouldn't say I love him, but a player I think is underappreciated, Mason Mount at Chelsea. I know that he gets absolute pelters from Chelsea fans, doesn't he? Particularly on social media. Whenever he produces anything less than an 8 out of 10 performance, Chelsea fans are on his back. But I think he's okay. I don't think he's a star. I don't think he's a Pulisic level player. I think he's a very solid squad player who can rotate in and out. Effectively a better version of Jesse Lingard, really. That's going to contribute more. I think he's in sort of region of 10 goals and assists in the Premier League this season. It's his first year in the Premier League. He's 21, is he? 22, 21? Coming out of the Championship. And to say, you've got a good 21-year-old homegrown academy boy squad player that's going to get 10 to 15 goal contributions a season, I think needs to be respected more than Chelsea fans saying they want him sold, they don't want him anywhere near the squad. They want Ross Barkley starting ahead of him. I think he's crazy. So for me, I think Mason Mount needs a little bit more respect put on his name, maybe even by his own set of fans, to be totally honest, because he's fine. He's a good player. And he's better than the other options they've got in that 10 slot, in my opinion. I think he's better than Barkley. I think you could play Kovacic slightly more advanced, but he's been Chelsea's best midfielder this season, playing where he is.
Definitely.
Pulisic is better as a wide man. Willian and Pedro are better as wide men. So I don't think there's a better option at 10, unless I'm missing anybody. I think maybe when Ziyech comes, he could play in the hole, but Frank's going to want him out wide to whip balls in towards Tammy. So I think Mason Mount is doing a good job for a 21-year-old who's playing his first season in the Premier League.
Agreed. I completely don't understand it. Like, I think at the beginning of the season, maybe it didn't help him that he went off quite fast and then got a little bit overrated, which I think... you also were talking about Harry Winks with this, and I think the same thing happens there.
He's another player I had written down, Harry Winks.
When you get players like that, people are just like, people love those homegrown players, and then they kind of hype them up into superstars, and I don't know, then the fall is much steeper, I think.
Yeah, and I think with Harry Winks in particular, sure, he's not a £50 million central midfielder, but not everybody can be a £50 million central midfielder. Sometimes you just need players in there that are good squad players and good around the dressing room. And I think Harry Winks gets hammered by everybody for his ability. And I just don't think he's as bad as everybody thinks he is.
Yeah, but I mean, he's not good.
I mean, I know that you don't rate him at all.
But I don't rate him in the context of people saying he's great. Like, I don't think he should ever play for England or whatever, but he's a perfectly fine player to have in your squad. Like, I mean, okay, right. Let's do the opposite question then. Somebody who you hate, who everybody else loves.
Okay, so I don't hate this player, but I think he's been clinically overrated over the last 12 months. I think it's finally starting to show through now, is Matteo Guendouzi.
Whoa! Spicy.
I like Matteo Guendouzi as a footballer, and I'm sure he is going to develop, but there was talk of him being sort of the next Vieira character. There was mentions of moves to Barcelona, Real Madrid 6 months ago. And he's way too raw for that, I think. He's better. He worked under Unai Emery, and I was positive about him under Unai Emery at times when he was in the midfield causing chaos with very little positional sense, flying out wide, coming into tackles.
Sure. Yeah.
And we saw him get exposed a few times, to be honest with you, even under Unai Emery, where he was
definitely
getting out of position and getting turned and then getting broken on. I think under Arteta, where it's slightly more structured, I think he's really struggled. I actually think he's got exposed a little bit. And players like Granit Xhaka, who took serious heat 6 months ago under Unai Emery, have been able to work better in a structured system.
Yeah.
And Guendouzi will go on to be a good player. He will go on to be a very good player. But right now, he is not as good as people were hyping him up to be. People were hyping him up to be one of the better central midfielders in that Arsenal team. And I don't think he is. I think he's probably low down the pecking order with Mikel Arteta, and rightly so. I don't know what you think as an Arsenal fan, but I'm not convinced.
I mostly agree with you. Like, I think he's to me, I think he probably will end up being a bit of a star so long as he stays fit. But that's mostly based on the idea that he was getting significant minutes in a tough league for a bigger side at 19.
Yeah.
And it's the same as with Rashford. When Rashford broke through, I didn't really rate him. And to be fair, I didn't think... looking back on it, I see why. Like, I mean, everything he hit went in, but I don't think he was particularly good or impressive. But what I didn't know enough about then, like what I didn't understand, was that simply getting those minutes at 18 years old is such a huge factor in your development. And now I think... Actually, earlier in the season, I found that I was arguing with people like where I was defending Rashford and saying I thought he was great when he was getting a little bit of stick. I mean, with Guendouzi, I completely agree. Like, bit of a headless chicken, very reliant on his physicality, which is the kind of thing you see with like young players, right? They've always been the strongest, the fastest, and then suddenly they're not. But I think that playing under a former midfielder will probably help him. And you're completely right. Like right now, Arteta's like, you know what? It's kind of what you were saying about Winks. Like, Arteta's like, is Granit Xhaka a limited player? Yes. But do I trust him to go in and play the specific role that I've given him? Yes. Can I trust Guendouzi to do that right now? Absolutely not. And I think
he will get into that role. He will be able to play that role. And Arteta, I'm sure, is a good enough coach to get the best out of him. But it was just the way people were talking about him, I'd say, in the last 12 months, up to sort of Arteta joining, really, that I think... Yeah. Maybe just overhyped him a little bit, but I don't hate him by any stretch. I think he is going to be a very good player. I think another name is probably Wilfried Zaha. Ooh. I think Wilfried Zaha is a fantastic player, but there's too much pressure on his shoulders by fans. Fans give him the moniker of being the saviour of Crystal Palace and a man that should be getting a £120 million move, whatever. He isn't helped by that, because then all teams do is double up on him. He gets kicked to death in that Crystal Palace side. Yeah. And I think because of that, people are like, oh, you know, he has the ability to be a superstar at Real Madrid or whatever. I just don't think he's that level. I think he is probably one of the better wingers in the Premier League, but people talking about him as moves to Real Madrid now, I think maybe a year ago, fair enough. Now I don't think it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, you'll get no argument from me on Wilf Zaha. But I think that's all we got time for, man. I think we better wrap this one up. Thanks very much for coming on. Do you have anything to plug before we say goodbye?
Go and watch We Need to Talk. That will have come out on Friday. If this goes out on... When's this going out? Thursday? No, Saturday?
It should go out this weekend, yeah.
This weekend. So, yeah, if it's out, go and watch We Need to Talk. I don't know what it's about. I haven't read it yet.
Cool. And make sure that you drop us a like if you've enjoyed this video. If you're listening on the podcast, thank you for subscribing. And we'll see you next week. Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.
It's extra time. He shoots, and it's a goal.